Fights of Fantasy, a fantasy miniatures war game by, spoiler alert, we're talking army lists today, Christopher Reichenbach. I thought today was going to be shove miniatures around the table day, sat down to start prepping some army lists, and realized halfway through the process, not only was I enjoying it, and there was enough meat on them bones, and maybe you guys like list building, so we should talk a little bit more about that. Dive a little deeper into list building and why it can be such a satisfying component of the melange, that potpourri of activities that we enjoy within the broader scope of these miniature war games. But first, let me warn those of you who are relatively new to the channel how we operate here within the House of Wargaming. Today's video is nominally about Fights of Fantasy. We're going to be talking about how to list build using these rules and some of the hidden wrinkles that you might not realize are there at first blush until you've sat down, got your hands dirty, and actually dug deep into the list building. There are things that don't reveal themselves to you. So not only will you learn new things about this game in particular, but maybe we can garner some insight into list building in general and the hobby in general. So we're going to go through the process, but stick around because throughout the conversation, we're also going to be discussing the hobby in general. So with that said, today what I'm going to do is stat out two armies. Very basic. I'm not going to use any of the leaders or heroes or special characters, with one exception that we'll talk about shortly. Instead, we're going to build two forces that are asymmetric, but fairly generic. Just a bunch of line troops to help us get a feel for how to build armies, and then we can put those on the table and learn the basic core mechanics of Fights of Fantasy. So when we return to the list building, we have a much better idea what we're looking for. And I have to say, now that I've gone through the process of building a couple of really basic army list building, there's more to this game than I realized, and I hope you'll stick around. The two armies we're going to discuss today are the Dank Elves. All of these figures come from Splinter Light. This is the one character we're going to be talking about. He is a wizard, Harry. And the Wolf Riding Goblins, the all-mounted nomadic force. These figures come from a couple of different manufacturers. Most of them come from Splinter Light. But some of I think it's these guys here, are from Pendraken. They have a line of 15mm figures that pair very well. You could argue that these are more pikes or perhaps spears, and these are lances, but we'll talk more about that here shortly. Before we get into the actual list building, I want to show you, when he sent me this rule set, our lovely host, Mr. Christopher Reichenbach, was kind enough to send me a whole stack of printouts. Now, some of this is errata. Some of this, and if you do download a copy of the PDF, make sure you grab the errata, because it has some fairly important missing documents in it, particularly how morale works. He goes into a lot more detail. Wonderful. He also includes with that something that would normally be of use to me. That is the introduction to fighting with 15mm figures using this rule set. Most of this is predicated on the notion that if you are doing mass battles with 15mm figures, you are using some sort of sabot round. You've probably already mounted all of your figures onto something like this, probably a little smaller, probably something along the lines of 40x60. If you are gaming for something like Hordes of the Things or one of those. And then, so this is the rules that you can use. I don't need to worry about that because my 15mm figures are all individually based. I use these as sabot rounds to make it easier to move my blocks of troops. So most of this doesn't really matter. And the best advice for this really is, hey, just game in half scale. So we appreciate the advice. That helps. The other thing that he sent, and there's a whole bunch of additional optional rules, wonderful little kit bash rules, but I wanted to talk about this. This is what he thinks you're going to want to do for your army roster. And you can see I started filling this out, but bear in mind, if each combatant, and this could be a unit, it could be a hero, could be a magic user, look at all of these different stats that you have to track. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing. As we've discussed in the past, there are essentially two different styles of miniature war games. In some of them, you have very few stats. quality, and combat. In the case of a game like Song of Blades and Heroes, the game's so nice they've made it 50 times. Other games, such as Fistful of Lead, you really only have one stat. What die type are you rolling? Now, a game like this, you don't have to, everybody uses D10s unless you have a keyword, and then you have to remember a list of keywords, anywhere from 1 for your mooks to as many as 10 for some of the high-powered superheroes. Generally, it caps out at about 3, but once you start factoring equipment, spells, special abilities, all that, it can get complicated, right? And this is the kind of game that takes a much more almost RPG or Warhammer-y approach to things. Warhammer, every single figure has, 10 stats between move, weapon skill, ballistic skill, wounds, initiative, blah, 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 blah. I don't like this. This doesn't work for me. You can see I started filling it out. Spear Goblin on a wolf. Oh boy, we already got to talk about that. Well, actually, we'll circle back around to that. Notice that a lot of these don't really need to be applied. If you take a look at the lists in the back, there are an awful lot of variables involved here. I've turned to a random page because it doesn't really matter. This is for small bipeds, magic, and missile. This may be for something like your Boom Boom spellcaster for the Ratlings. And again, look, here's our first 5 attributes, if you will. Small, slow, terrestrial. Oh, we don't want slow. We want normal speed. No, these are Ratlings, so they're going to be fast. So we drop down to this third list. So we're still small, meaning less than man-sized. But now we've got boys that are fast. And you can see they'll move 8 inches instead of 6 for the slow. Other games may take the approach of, well, slow is -1 and fast is +1 movement. Everybody moves 7 if you're small, -1, +1. In this case, we're just using the attributes. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Okay, it's tomato, tomato, tomato. But you have these 5. Are we fast? Well, we're terrestrial. We're not water-based. We're not aerial. There are bipeds, but we knew that already. And then these guys are the class of magic and missile dictates where your bonuses lie. But notice, if you will, that for your common, and here's another axis, if you will. So we have our 5. Oh, now here's attribute number 6. Are we talking about a common warrior, superior, elite, noble, renowned, legendary? Increasing skills. So once we've picked, okay, we're on biped, the page is 1. We've decided we're fast, so we've picked this row. And now we've decided that we're talking about our common guys. Well, because they are shooters and spellcasters, they'll have a +1 to both magic and missile. Okay, I don't have a bonus to either melee combat or morale modifier. Notice that for common, superior, and elite, we've got 1-1-1 across the board. That's the same for our slow and our regular moderate speed and our fast. So if I've got 1-1-1s across the board, unless we get up into the notable, and there's not going to be many of those, given that the costs go from 42 points per figure to 164, I can have a whole lot of those guys, right? Okay, so I'm not even going to bother writing that down. Ultimately, what this all boils down to, what this brings us to, the moral of the story, if you will, is this is a game that you're probably not going to want to use a standard boilerplate roster. There's a whole lot of wasted space on here that your eyes are going to have to drift through in order to pluck out the important and pertinent information. Instead, what you're probably going to want to do is do things your own way. We're wargamers. That's kind of what we do, right? So this is what I've done. And I've said, look, now, of course, I have attack, damage, and wounds. 1-1-1. Now, I did that, and you notice that this first top row is for our goblins. I've got my common spear goblins. That's this guy that we already took a look at earlier today. Okay, so he's got the shield. He's got, well, it's not very heavy armor, so you can build your roster to suit your figure. Whether we call this a spear or a lance is up to us. It's up to the amount of points we have, and it's up to the fluff that we've prepared for ourselves. As this is a testing game, I don't really have fluff. So I said, look, these spear goblins, they're only moving 6 inches, and here's where I call a timeout. Because the game doesn't really make it clear. Now, I could be misreading this. Again, I haven't played a full game of it yet. We're kind of learning as we go. Is this figure classed as a quadruped? Remember that we picked shooty and magic bipeds, but there are a whole lot of pages devoted to small quadrupeds. Our wolf is going to be probably moderate sized. It's medium. It's the size of a guy, right? These are 150-pound wolves in order to carry these 80-pound, 60-pound goblins all over the place. So we actually have two figures in one here, and I'm not quite sure how this is going to work. And some of these two figures in one have spears, and some of them have bows. See? So what I've opted to do is I have priced out the goblins, and I've purchased them. And then I priced out the wolves, and I've purchased those wolves, and then I jammed the two of them together. Now, there are rules in the game for what happens when a mount is killed versus when a rider is killed. How are we going to deal with that? Not 100% sure yet. We'll burn that bridge when we come to it. I just wanted to let you know that one of the first issues I ran into is the complexity of the difference between a mounted figure and a figure in which the rider and mount are treated as a single operative unit. So when we take a look at how much a spear goblin costs, at 16 points a pop, there's a lot of information I realized after writing this out I don't need. They're all going to be one attack. They're all going to do one damage. They all have one wound. So they're fine till you bonk them on the head, and then we take them off the table. In this case, I'm probably spent too much money because the wolves now can move 18 inches. They have attacks at +2, and they give a +1 morale bonus. Oh, by the way, I also purchased for a 9 extra points per wolf that they ignore the woods. Not the riders, but as long as they're mounted, they will not suffer the usual half-speed penalty. What kind of armor do they have? I don't know, thick, full. We'll call it light armor. And as I said, because I'm statting these out based on the appearance, we've got a small wooden shield for the spear guy and fairly light armor. I purchased small shield, it's medium armor, so sue me. He's got a chain shirt underneath that. Wherever you go, these little guys always surprise you. So what does that mean? Well, a couple of things. It means the total defense for the goblin is +3. And so what I think I'm going to do is once you're going to fight the goblin, and once the goblin is dead, the wolf takes off. So this might be a little overpriced because we're going to use the better value for everything. If you fight these guys, they're going to get 2 attacks, one at +1, one at +2 melee. But all attacks are going to be against the guy with the better armor, meaning the wolf is going to be delivering double attacks. But because killing the goblin removes the wolf, I think we're going to be okay. It's not going to affect the balance. And again, this first game is all about learning the activation economy. It's all about learning the basic rudiments of combat. So if it's slightly unbalanced, that's okay. So what do we got? Well, at the end of the day, I have purchased a total of 10 common spear goblins. I've purchased 12 rather, 6 bow goblins, and then I do have some goblins with swords over here. I do have the option at some point. Where are my sword gobs at? Give me 1 second. I'll dig one up. Here we go. Look at this guy. Look at this angry fella waving his curved sword all over the place, howling like a banshee, I'm sure. So I got 6 of these guys. Now, to be honest with you, some of these guys, one of the reasons I'm struggling to find them is that some of these guys are actually carrying like banners, which I'm just going to class those as regular weapons. Spears do have the special ability. They can attack at a 1-inch range, meaning you can't attack back. And when you charge with a spear, you get a +2 on that first attack. That's true whether you are charged or whether you charge the other guy, by the way. So it should be pretty easy. I also have, you guys have seen the figures of the big leader types. I haven't statted those out. That army force is going to take us to about 1,200 points. All right, great. That's nice. Because I have a lot more flexibility when it comes to our good buddies, the bad guys who are so good, the guys you love to hate, the dank elves. Knife ears get the knife. Well, I don't have any knives. I just have spears. So in this case, we have a spellcaster. We'll talk about him in just a moment. we're going to save him for last because we have some other abilities. Now, notice that these guys here, they've got spears. This guy with the fancy blue crest on his helmet would normally be a leader, but again, I can't be bothered with that just yet. So I have a unit of spears. I have a unit with 2 swords. We'll go down the list. I've got 12 guys with superior swords, meaning 2-handed swords. Look at these guys. That is one heck of a chopper. You don't want to be on the business end of that. A big sword like this. Oh, and by the way, they all have medium armor, don't they? Oh, they have heavy armor. See the heavy armor? We got to talk a little bit about that. So big ups, big bonus after the charge is over. And then the big sword, not only do they have the +3 to melee, because we're dealing with superior boys instead of our common goblins, our superior guys are going to be fighting at a total of +3 on the melee. Okay, their big sword, when they hit, does +1 damage. Now, that's not going to do them any good this time around because everybody they're attacking has just the 1 wound. But moving forward, if they fight a team that's got giants on their side, that could come in really handy. So we've got the big swords. We've got the 2 swords. So check this out. I got a bunch of guys. Again, these are from Splintered Light, and they're dual wielding. Where's my panther, right? Oh, look at that. It's a dark elf with 2 scimitars. Where have I seen that before? Literally everywhere. Now, they're only going to be at +2 to melee, but they have an extra attack. So again, here I had to call out. I did have to write down the attacks, damage, and wounds. But I'm still not writing down things like mana or magic modifiers. He doesn't have any magic modifiers. Why would I write it down? It's just more information to get lost in on my roster. As I said, he's got heavy armor and 2 attacks. Those guys at 15, there's 15 of them. They cost 18 points versus 16 for the guys with the spears. And then again, our superior. Now here's where we get to have a little bit more fun. See these guys. Wait, where's my boys at? These guys right here. Here we go. Look at this guy. He's got a little hand crossbow, and wouldn't you know it, that is a weapon you can purchase. It's in the rules as written. He's got a little sword, and he's got a crossbow. So that's what M&M. I said, oh, maybe I should purchase these guys as melee and missile. So they get +2 on both of those attacks. +1 to move, or to their morale, I should say. They only get 1 attack, but they can attack at a distance. The hand crossbows take 2 turns to reload and only have a range of 12 inches. But hey, maybe you sidle on up next to those spear guys and you launch your hand crossbow this turn so that next turn, if you get the initiative, you can crash home and you've already whittled down their numbers enough. The last thing I really want to talk about here is, so I've got 4 units you'll notice here. So we've got the spears, we've got swords. Oh, come on, paper, help me out here. So we've got the big swords, we've got the dual wielders, we've got sword and hand crossbow, and then we've got the superior spears. So a whole lot more guys on the ground here, but a whole lot, I should say probably about the same attacks. And that's going to bring the tally for the Dank Elves up to about 1,200. I didn't write it down here anywhere, did I? It's about 1,200 points. I think they're giving up a few points. But I also wanted to talk about this guy right here, the magic guy. Right? And so see how he's got that great big sword? I said, I'm going to make him a magic and a melee guy. He's got the heavy armor, but of course, this is one of those games where every armor check that you make, as your armor goes up by 1, your spell casting goes down by 1. I painted these guys specifically with bronze armor because elves and cold iron, they don't mix. But in this game, no armor mixes. All right, one other thing I don't think I've pointed out yet, after you cast a magic spell, you have to take 2 turns to catch your breath. I got to relax. I got to recharge my blue potion. My mana needs to come back up. But let's take a look at what spellcasting looks like in this game, shall we? Notice that I have purchased a superior magic and melee guy. And he's got a +2 to his melee and nothing for the shooting. I didn't buy him any distance weapons. Why would I, right? He doesn't actually have any bonus to that. When he casts a spell, it's a D20 opposed roll system. He gets a +2 to that spell. You get a +2 to whatever armor you've got. At least to start. He's got a sword. Now he starts out with only 60 mana, but I wanted another 30. So I spent good worth, that's the currency of the realm in this game, to buy a magic wand that gives him another 30 points worth of mana. And what that's going to do is allow him. So here's where you think about, here's where you start doing your min-maxing. And here's where we segue into a little bit of general discussion. There are people in my comments who will tell me that min-maxing is bad. And I'm here to remind you guys, min-maxing is just trying to win the game. It's not bad, particularly in a game like this. Do your best to win the game. I don't know why this is so controversial. I do know why. But I can't say it in a way that wouldn't make half the people in this hobby look like a bunch of petulant, spoiled children. So I'm not going to talk about the why. I'm just going to remind you guys, min-max. It's all in good fun, man. Push these things to their limit. See where they break. See what kind of killer combos you can find, particularly in a game like this. I haven't even touched on the fact that each one of these abilities has a different point cost. The slow people, that terrain immunity, because our slow medium quadruped only moves 14 inches per turn compared to 18 for the fast, there's the bump for being immune to woods or swamp or whatever the terrain type may be. You don't have to spend as much on the slow guys. That's good game design. I really like that. You also have these other special abilities, such as add a breath attack. Hey, cloud bursting damage. So whatever you calculate the entire rest of the worth and then double it, because you now have this ultra powerful weapon that can attack multiple people. You also have the ability to purchase a morale attack. What does that mean? Well, if you've got a large, terrifying thing, a giant, a dragon, a juggernaut, a troop of ogres that are terrifying to behold, bump that cost up by 50%. And now every time somebody wants to attack them, they have to pass a morale check to do so. That's going to be spendy, because you're not going to make your pukey little inferior quadrupeds terrifying. Probably. You might. I can't imagine why you would, but maybe the situation calls for it. Normally, you're going to be dumping it onto one of these guys. Look at that, 52 points. Okay, now he's 75. And that's assuming, right now he's 75 because it's hard to get in contact with him. But again, with two D20s rolling against each other, that's, that's a swingy kind of system. That +2 it's only a 10% increase in the likelihood of you winning that roll off. We also have add morale or missile immunity. So skeletons, for example, can't be hurt by missiles. Doesn't apply to the big cannons or siege weapons, but arrows, they're just going to tickle the ribs of the skeletons. So add another half a base width, right? There you go. We can also add melee attacks. And notice, as our inferior troops get more attacks, so I'm going to add 3 attacks, but those attacks are going to be with no modifier. It's only going to be +2 points for each of those. Compare that to our legendary figure. If he's got 2 attacks, it's going to cost us an extra 11. If he's got 2 attacks and he's terrifying, I think you're going to double that 11. I think that goes into the value that's doubled. All kinds of different things. And that doesn't even get into the list of what the weapons do. What are the costs? What are the abilities for those? That doesn't even get into the specials where you've got magic armor or magic weapons that have other abilities. Instead, while we were talking about magic, so let me just roll back to the spells and how those work, and we can take a look at why having 90 points I think is going to be a nice sweet spot for our spellcaster. If this army list works out, this is a great way to learn these games. All I need to do is add a commander line down here. Spend another 300 points on a super tough boss character, and because the rest of this will apply. So some of the choices I've made here may not be great for this fight, but I'm not just thinking about the next fight. I'm not one of those generals that plans for the last war. I'm not even the general that's planning for the next war. I'm planning for, I should say the next battle. I'm thinking 2 battles down the line. So that's why I've done this way. It's also a lot more efficient. I don't have to sit down and recalculate all this stuff. I can just add another couple of characters and we're good to go. So for magic, we talked a little bit about this, but I'm going to go over it once again. If I want to cause havoc, with my Dank Elf Sorcerer. Causes the target or targets to attack any combatants in base contact, whether they're friend or foe. Oh, that's a good one. Turns all of your figures into orcs. The range cost is dependent on, the cost of the spell is dependent in part on the range. If that wizard wants to stand in a corner and cast spells 24 inches away, he's going to spend 3 points every time. If I want to target a single individual, that giant we keep coming back to, costs 1 mana. If I want to target a whole unit of 10 guys, cool, it only costs 4 times as much. But again, remember, if I'm 24 inches away, the base cost is 3. 24 inches away, I'm up to 6, and now targeting a unit, that's 10 points. I've only got 6 of those in my arsenal. And that means, because I can only cast every third round at most, I have to hope the game lasts 18 turns. I don't think that's going to happen. So my wizard is going to juice his spells early, maybe save some mana for later. But if I'm dropping a Havoc down, I am going to hit them with a duration of 1 turn. All right, so there's another 4 points already. So we were up to, let's start over. Base is 4, 3, 6 because we're at 24 inches. 10 because it's a unit, 11 because it's only going to last 1 turn, and then, oh look, power and potency can only be 4. I am going to be juicing this thing up, getting a +4 on that. That's going to cost me a total of 15 points. I can only, wait, 15, is that right? No, more than 15. That's going to be up to, we're already up to, 11. 3, 4, 4. So that's 11. Oh, no, 3, 3, 4 is 10, 11, 15. We're up to 19 points. There you go. So I'm only going to be able to cast 3 of those. In a 10-turn game, that's fine. I drop the 3, and you know what? Maybe I even bring them into melee at that point. But that's a good example of how my brain works and how your brain should work. If I've got 60 points, I don't need that extra one. But if I think I'm going to want to fire that thing off, another time or two, so at 20 points a pop, I can get an extra shot off and still have 10 points of mana left over in the fuel tank to drop a little harm magic. That actually disrupts spells. Maybe what we want to do instead is, what's a nice little light and easy aperitif, a little after dinner minty spell? What might we want to cast? Heal. He cures damage. It's going to cost 3. I got to get it right up on him now. I've only got 10 left over. We start budgeting. So I think this is a game that probably benefits from a nice slower pace. Don't try to cram this into an hour. Maybe set up your terrain, and particularly on this first game, we're going to want to take our time. We're going to want to savor the meal. Every one of those courses of the meal probably equates to the turn of the game. You're going to want to take your time. You're going to want to think about this. You're going to say, hey, give me a minute here, guy. I need to figure out where I want to juice this. My guy is 18 inches away now. So that's 5 points. I can only do an individual on the heal. Okay, I'm trying to heal my buddy. So that's 6, 7 for the turn. And now I've only got 3 points left over for power and potency. Power is how many wounds of damage are healed. Potency is the additional wounds. Oh, so you can heal up to 8 wounds. That's pretty good. But like I said, I only have 3 points left over. So I guess I'm going to bump it by 3 points on the potency. Though I guess I have to do both power and potency. So maybe actually I don't. I'm just going to jack the power by 3. I get the +3, heal 3 wounds. Bob's your uncle, and you're back in the fight. So that's kind of how Magic works. And we're going to do a nice pan and scan across the forces of the Dank Elves, give you a nice glamour shot so you know what we're dealing with when we get these boys on the table. When it comes to army list building, I maintain this could be a hobby in its own right. Very similar to playing games like EVE Online. It's all about the numbers. You sit down and you put together a basic Becky version of your army, and it's too many points. Now you go through an iterative process. What if I take this ability away from that unit? How many points does that buy me? Does that mean I can now afford the musician and the banner carrier for my spearmen? Oh, the banner carrier I can afford, but I can't give them all the abilities I want. Where else can I shave a couple of points? Can I add a few points here? You tinker, you experiment, you throw it on the table, you find what works, and you realize these guys I paid way too much for. We're going to go back to the drawing board, build them from the ground up. This part of the game is a delight, and it gets shortchanged in a lot of games. There is a theory out there about the Christmas morning test. Can I buy a game and get it on the kitchen table in 30 minutes? That's not the kind of hobby that we engage in here at the House of Wargaming. It's fine. It makes for a nice break, but that's a very selective and limited use test. It might make your game a lot more money, but we're hobbyists. We're not interested in the money. We're interested in the experience, and we're interested in flexing those mental muscles that allow you to track multiple costs across multiple units and come up with the perfect army, not for winning every game perhaps, not for beating every army perhaps, but the perfect army for your temperament. And there's another aspect of this hobby that doesn't get talked about enough, and I'm not going to do it here. We're already getting up to about 30 minutes on this video. There is a very important connective tissue between the muscles of the army and the skeleton of the strategy. The strategy that you use has to be given some thought when you're purchasing your army. And there's a whole field of analysis that I think goes largely untouched here. I think it's one of those things that people just intuitively understand. You don't really need to talk about the fact that if I'm building a very defensive-minded army, I'm not worried about speed. I'm going to plonk them on the table and have them hold their ground. And that's one of the key differences between the two armies that you're looking at here. One of these armies is all about speed. They're not strong. They want to hold off, stay back at a distance. They want to pick their fights and pick their moment before they crash in. They want to overwhelm with numbers, which they can do, because they can use the terrain to their advantage. They can use their speed to their advantage to ensure that they're always engaging in 2-to-1 unfair fights. That's the Goblins' motive. We've got another army with a lot more figures that are a lot stronger, but they lose the initiative from the perspective of they're going to have to wait for the Goblins to come to them. With very limited distance shooting, we didn't buy a lot of longbows, so we're going to have to take the army to guys that we can't catch. The dank elves have to follow a different strategy, and you have to consider that when you're building your army list. And again, because it's an initial game, I might go a little light on the terrain. Might drop a hill in the woods. Just kind of keep it a little asymmetric. Throw the boys at each other. See what happens. That will be a tale for either next week or maybe 2 weeks from now. We got a lot of other fun stuff coming up on the channel. I hope you'll stick around for that. And until we actually get these figures down on the table, down on a grassy green, maybe a grassy knoll, but probably mostly a little bowling green to keep things simple. Although that does mean that I guess I got to do a couple of forests so that our boys with the woodland immunity can take full advantage of that. I thought I was done. One last parting thought. One of the things I'm looking forward to this game, and for those of you that are still here, I'm assuming you're longtime viewers of the channel. And by long time, I mean just like this year. You'll remember that we fought a number of battles with our Goblin Wolf Riders, and they traditionally get taken out back to the shed and just spanked like the naughty children that they are. And so part of my desire to get this Fights of Fantasy on the table is to see if we can't find a game system in which our lightly armed and lightly armored but very sprinty gobos have a fighting chance. And from the looks of things, Fights of Fantasy might be the game that makes shooting scoots a viable tactic. If you want to find out if it is, you're going to have to tune in next time when we do our fumble through. Till then, I'm Mr. Wargaming, and I'm praying for you.